The channel of Exception Label Television is pleased to receive you every 12:30 Central African Time on its channel for the Midday News Bulletin. Before we open this news broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, get the headlines with Georgina Mpiga.
In Uganda, Parliament scraps presidential age limit. Museveni could rule till 2037. Legislature in the Uganda Parliament have voted on the controversial bill to lift the presidential age limit, and the supporters of the bill took the day. Next, with the death of Custus Juma, Africa has lost an advocate of technological innovations. This influential Kenyan professor, who specializes in technological progress and development issues in Africa, has attracted a number of reactions from around the world, including those of Africa heads of state.
So, ladies and gentlemen, once more, welcome to the 12:30 on Label TV, your Pan-African channel. We open as announced in the headlines. Legislators in the Ugandan Parliament have voted on the controversial bill to lift the age term limit. Listen to more details in this report. The vote, which was opened with legislators saying a yes or nay no, needed at least 289 votes in favor of the amendment to proceed to the next stage of legislation. In the end, 317 legislators voted in favor of the amendment, 97 voted no, while 2 members abstained from the vote. The bill will now be closely scrutinized by a parliamentary committee before it can be brought back to the floor of Parliament for a second reading. In the build-up to this vote, Parliament was the scene of chaos as 2 legislators were arrested as they tried to access Parliament to serve the Speaker and Deputy Attorney General with court summons that would have prematurely ended today's debate. The legislators, who are also lawyers, have sued the 2 officials over the suspension of 6 opposition legislators that happened on Monday during the presentation of the Legal Affairs Committee report. The suspended legislators were accused of disorderly conduct and refusing to heed the Speaker's instructions. The legislators were debating 2 reports from the Legal Affairs Committee, which had been tasked to scrutinize a report on the presidential age limit bill. While majority of the committee members, 20 out of 30, approved the lifting of the age limit, 8 legislators, including a member of the ruling National Resistance Movement Party, opposed it, saying the amendments were being done for the benefit of one person. In debating the report, the Speaker questioned the inclusion of recommendations to restore presidential term limits and extension of the parliamentary and presidential terms to 7 years. If this bill is passed into law, President Yoweri Museveni, who is currently 73 years old, will be able to contest in the 2021 general elections. Under the current constitution of Uganda, Museveni, who will be 77 in 2021, can contest for the presidency since Article 102B stipulates that a presidential candidate shall be a Ugandan aged between 35 and 75 years. In brief and images, jailed South African track star Oscar Pistorius will appeal against his increased prison sentence of 13 years and 5 months at South Africa's Constitutional Court. South Africa's Supreme Court more than doubled Oscar Pistorius' murder sentence last month, accepting the state prosecutor's argument that the original jail term of 6 years for shooting dirt his girlfriend River Steenkamp was shockingly lenient. Pistorius' family spokesman was not available to comment. Legal analysts have said Pistorius could appeal to the Constitutional Court, South Africa's topmost legal authority, but saw his chances of success as slim. The gold medal winning athlete, a double amputee known as the Blade Runner for his carbon fiber prosthetics, was given the minimum 15 years prescribed for murder by the Supreme Court, reduced to 13 years and 5 months taking into account time served. Now let's move to the next in the formation in this newscast. Since Sunday, December 17, the information has fallen. The former president of the Republic of Mali, Amadou Toumani Touré, exiled in Senegal since the coup of March 2012, is preparing to return home on December 24th by decision of the new president of the Republic, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Naike Mbandong tells us more.
According to his supporters, Amadou Toumani Touré will return to Bamako next Sunday, 5 years after leaving his country for Dakar, where he lived since the coup d'etat that forced him into exile in 2012. If they do not confirm, not this return many times announced, the Malian authorities do not deny it either. In a statement issued on Monday, December 17, his party, the Party for Economic Development and Solidarity, announced that the President of the Republic, His Excellency El Haj Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, reacts favorably to the return of the former president. Amadou Toumani Touré, the next day, in a second statement from the same party, indicated that his governing bodies express their sincere thanks and owe their gratitude to the President Boubacar Keïta for allowing the return to Mali of ATT, in short, in condition worthy of his rank. Amadou Toumani Touré has been living in the Senegalese capital since 2012, the date of his fall following a coup d'etat. Very discreet, moving only in private, after 5 years of silence imposed by the Senegalese authority to avoid offending the palace of Koulouba, Amadou Toumani Touré will therefore perhaps regain his right to speak at the end of the week. Once he has joined his country, according to the sources, it seems to be for the moment only a symbolic comeback. ATT should indeed go back to Dakar at the end of the year. There would be a few more months left to settle the logistical details of his return to Mali, especially the question of his housing in Bamako. Faced with this claim of pro-ATT or the imminent arrival of their mentor, the Malian authorities are cautious. On condition of anonymity, a senior official indicates that the return of the former president is very likely, while indicating that the head of state has given the green light and that the two men will meet once Amadou Toumani Touré returns.
On a different note, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi is asking the international community to support efforts being made by the Somali government to restore and rebuild the country, which has been damaged by 28 years of conflict. Listen. Grandi made the call after touring a new settlement in the southern port city of Kismayo for former Somali refugees who have returned home. The UN High Commissioner, who highlighted the extent of physical damage caused over the two-decade conflict, expressed content with the visible signs of restoration and economic activity in the streets, including small businesses run by returning refugees. There are currently over 2 million displaced Somali, both inside the country and in exile. Filippo Grandi, who earlier in the week visited the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya, home to thousands of Somali refugees, noted that Somalia still faces several challenges, including insecurity and drought, in spite of the progress made over the years.
I think a lot of progress has occurred, including what we see around here today, but much more is needed to make a return sustainable and, more importantly, to make the country viable for its own people.
The new settlement in Kismayo consists of housing for 300 families, a new hospital, a market and a school.
These boys and girls around me are people that have grown up in a refugee camp. And as I told them a few minutes ago, they're not refugees anymore. What better result for UNHCR to see young people go from being refugee to being people back in their country?
Most of the returning refugees have spent decades in exile, waiting for signs of stability and the promise of education and jobs before giving up the safety of the refugee camps to return to their home country. Whereas some 19,000 Somali refugees still living in Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp are said to be preparing for voluntary repatriation, most of them cite security concerns as reasons for staying in the refugee camp. The militant Islamist group Al-Shabaab still control large parts of the south-central Somalia as they continue their insurgency against the government. As announced in the headlines, today's focus the death of influential Kenyan Professor Calestius Juma, who specializes in technological project and development issues in Africa, on December 15 has attracted a number of reactions from around the world, including African heads of state commentary on this great loss for the whole African continent.
Here are two very familiar products, mobile phones and coffee. Mobile phones are widely adopted. Coffee was a subject of opposition for nearly 300 years. There have been many products that have been the subject of similar resistance, ranging from tractors, refrigeration, printing of the Quran, recorded music, which was banned several times in this country, all the way to modern-day controversies surrounding issues like artificial intelligence and robotics. Another good example of opposition to new products was the case of margarine. The opponents used legislation as a way to curtail the adoption. Some of the legislation required that margarine was labeled, and in many cases there were requirements for it to be colored pink so that it could be distinguished by consumers and rejected. These laws are actually quite similar to the ones that are being proposed to suppress the diffusion of genetically modified products today. I would like to invite you to explore these themes in my new book, Innovation and Its Enemies.
An internationally recognized authority on the question of the usefulness of science and innovation for the sustainable development of developed and developing countries. This is how Harvard University sums up the character of Kalesius Juma, professor of the prestigious establishment, who died on Friday, December 15 from cancer. He was 64 years old. A regular contributor to renowned publications such as the New York Times or the prolific author Guardian, the Kenyan researcher defended in his writings the interests of entrepreneurship and technological innovation in transforming African societies, particularly in the field of environment and agriculture. When Kalesius Juma spoke of the origin of his attachment to these questions of progress, he used a specific anecdote. At 9-year-old, his village of Port Victoria, nestled on the shores of Lake Victoria on the Ugandan border, is flooded. Most of the crops in this remote part of the western Kenya are destroyed and rations are running out very quickly. The villagers then think of a way to replant the losses in a smaller area, but John Juma, the father of Kalesius, a carpenter by profession, crosses the Ugandan border and comes back with cassava curds. A carbohydrate-rich, flood-resistant tuber, cassava was not popular in this part of Kenya at the time. John Juma must therefore try to convince of the usefulness of the introduction of this plant to replace the destroyed crops, several villagers fearing that it attracts the wild pigs displaced by the floods and that they come again and destroy the crops. John Juma finally won. Cassava is now one of the staples of the region. This episode will leave the future researcher with the certainty that opposition to an innovation does not have to be a barrier to progress. In sum, defender of biotechnology means, according to him, to transform the African agricultural potential in force of economic development. Kalesius Juma has also attracted the wrath of activist anti-GMO, genetically modified organisms. A member of the executive committee of prestigious organizations such as the Aga Khan Foundation, Kalesius Juma also co-chaired the African Union High-Level Group on Science, Technology and Innovation. He also founded the African Center for Technology Studies, a Nairobi-based NGO specializing in technology research and sustainable development. The announcement of his death triggered a wave of reactions from politicians, entrepreneurs, and alumni on social networks. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his rival Raila Odinga have hailed one of Kenya's most eminent scholars. Rwandan President Paul Kagame, for his part, regretted the loss of, he said, one of our brightest minds dedicated to innovation, education, and prosperity of Africa. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has funded several projects of the Kenyan professor, thanked an inexhaustible champion of economic and social development in Africa. Talking about economy and development on the African continent, the laying of the first stone of the second bridge to connect Cameroon and Chad after the Nkweli Bridge between Kuseri and Jamena, including the localities of Hayagwa and Bongo, should take place in June 2018. Naike Mbandong has the story.
According to a aforementioned committee, work is quite advanced on all the technical files on the project, but the search for the necessary financing for the construction of this kind of infrastructure is still going on, particularly with the European Union and African Development Bank. The future bridge between Yagoua and Bongor will cost about 92 billion CFA franc, on which 58% will be financed by the state of Cameroon against 42% for the Chadian state. This infrastructure is one of the major integrating projects currently underway in the Semak zone, along with the project to extend the Cameroonian railway to Chad or the construction of the Sang-Melima, also in Cameroon, road, as mentioned on the official website Invest in Cameroon. This project fits in perfectly with the spirit and letter of two of the EDB's 5 strategic priorities, which are integrating Africa and improving the quality of life of the people in Africa. According to Ousmane Doré, the Chief Executive Officer of the Pan-African Bank for Central Africa, the next bridge will unlock the economic potential of both regions, including timber, agriculture, and mining sectors in northern Cameroon and southern Chad. In addition, in the face of the terrorist threat, especially Boko Haram, the next infrastructure should make it possible to secure more goods and people. All in all, to make this building more efficient, several other infrastructure will accompany its construction, as the asphalting on the 14 kilometers road between the Cameroonian city of Yagoua and Logone River, then the revitalization of a stretch of equivalent distance on the Chadian side to the city of Bongor, as well as the rehabilitation of several socio-economic infrastructure.
Culture news now, ladies and gentlemen. The little brother of Maître Gims Dadou Juna Sungula is the son of Juna Janana. This 26-year-old crooner has made a name in few months by singing Love and Heartache. Georgine Mpiga gives us more details about this young man.
Aujourd'hui je suis fatigué, je t'ai regardé dormir. Et si ma voix peut t'apaiser, je chanterai pour toi toute la nuit.
Dadou Juna Sungala is well known as a musical artist, but wasn't born under a lucky star, but was instead born under a constellation of stars, such as his father Jujana, who originated from Congo and is a rumba tenor. Dadou was born in a family of 15 children, which has several singers. This young man of 26 years old grows mostly in the shadow of a certain Master Gims, who is 5 years older than him. Dadou used to accompany his brother to the studio, then decided by accident to make a career in music, which led to the success of breaking into the hearts of young ladies. Today, more than 52 million viewers on YouTube convinces him that he never made a mistake. The pretty boy becomes a boy band all by himself, who sings about love, his joys, and his failures to a feminine public. The family circle no doubt counted again with, in addition to male figures in voice and gold records, a mother fan of religious music. I grew up with rappers. I have a certain credibility on this side. We can make sounds together without being ashamed. Smiles, the artist who claims to have 250 sounds in reserve for future albums.
Je l'ai promis à ton papa, je vais prendre soin de sa fille. Tu fais partie de ma famille, Dieu sait combien j'aime ma famille. S'ils te demandent, c'est qu'ils sont curieux. S'ils te redemandent, c'est qu'ils sont envieux.
In the same line, prolific, the 37-year-old French playwright Mohamed El Khatib from Morocco blurs the boundaries between dramatic art and creative reality in creation. Once more, we listen to Georgine Mpiga.
French playwright Mohamed El Khabati from Morocco blurs the boundaries between dramatic art and creative reality in creation. On stage, the author and director of 37 Years Orchestras, the speeches of 60 supporters of the football club present themselves all in one room. All the children and grandchildren of miners were asked one and the same question, which animated their conversation for 2 years in Linz when he came to film them and interview them every other weekend. 37-year-old Mohammed and 85-year-old Yvette wrote a text together involving why the poor would be confined to documentaries and why wouldn't they have the right to fiction. For him, their performance at the La Colline National Theatre, which is the capital's cultural center, is akin to a takeover of the culture Bastille.
Sporting news now. Numerous Nigerian football fans had the privilege to watch a match with their icon and star ex-friends and Arsenal striker Thierry Henry. In the same line, the star was coronated the Igwe of goals in a ceremony organized by Guinness. Gauthier Perchano tells us more.
Lagos had a fulfilled day as they were offered a rare chance to watch a match with Arsenal legend Thierry Henry at the landmark event center courtesy Guinness Nigeria PLC. Henry, who was fondly called Igwe by his numerous Nigerian fans, was also coronated as he was labeled the king of goals. Though the French striker also played for clubs like Monaco, Barcelona and Juventus, his time in London is fondly remembered across the world. When asked who was the best African player he played with while at Arsenal, the ex-striker picked Kanu Nwankwo. He explained that his technical ability stands him out. Henry, however, noted that the humble former Nigerian Super Eagles captain was widely underrated. As he was providing answers to the question, he said to journalists, "Don't forget about Lauren. I also love his game, but when it comes to the techniques, I will give it to Kanu. I am not saying this because I'm in Nigeria. Even if I was in another country, I will say same. Kanu was very good, but he is underrated. He is so humble, nice guy. You never hear any bad thing coming from him, just positive things." Henry also recalled his time at Monaco with Victor Ikpeba, who was also present with other ex-Super Eagles stars at the landmark event center on Sunday.
The Igwe of gold, Mr. Thierry Henry.
It is always with a very big pleasure that we inform you on Label TV, your Pan-African channel. The entire newscast was produced by Mohamed Aj and Bill Mange at the sound. We thank you for choosing Label Television. Stay tuned and don't forget, the best is yet to come. Goodbye.